If you can all remember the wheel, the college and career readiness wheel that was broken down into 3 domains of cognitive, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. We have a recent article that sort of gets teams and not just educators, but also community members talking about those competencies and how they can infuse those within their instruction, their home life, or community work. The third bullet point is, again, to highlight some project resources that include some new measures we're currently developing and sharing with our current teams of the 14, 16, 15, 17 cohorts, as well as some new essential components regarding goal setting and self-regulation. We'll follow that up with some highlighted research from a September 2015 article from the APA, the American Psychological Association, that if you're looking for materials that will help support your work around college and career competencies, this is probably one you want to share with administration and fellow teachers. And lastly, just to have a participant discussion. So although we have an open format at any time, you can chat something in the box. The last part of this webinar is just to dedicate time to discussion and brainstorming about where you're at, what your hopes are for your continued work in this project, and any barriers or fears that you'd like to discuss as a team. So here is our article that we'd like to share, and we'll take 5 minutes to read this article. You can pull it up through your email that we sent you earlier or through the link that's just been provided. So I will start the timer now, but please do take a moment to read this.
All right, I just gotta I just got a call from Trista who asked me to double check that the audio was working. She wasn't hearing Jane, but I was wondering if it was because um, we were trying to be quiet to read the article. So, Jane, can you test your audio? And Trista, can you verify whether you're able to hear both of us?
Sure. At this moment, we have about 2 minutes left, and our task is to be reading the article, Non-Academic Skills Are Key to Success, but what should we call them? Okay, I think we have taken about 5 minutes to read that article. Madeline, do you have any suggestions of how we should proceed?
I would say people are welcome to call in if they'd like to try the audio. There is long distance charges, which is why I didn't want to use that option. Um, and I'm just getting a phone call now for tech support. So I'm going to try to work on it, guys, and I'm really sorry for all the trouble. I would say, Jane, keep going, and hopefully it doesn't cut out too much.
Okay. Okay, so I've advanced the slide to the updated competency wheel, and we've had some interesting work done around the state that we're sharing the competency wheel with. One of which is a community college who has said this wheel is the real deal, and they've added text to the wheel to start embedding these competencies within their community college work, knowing that all of these competencies are developmental and it's not like a pinnacle, an end point as you learn them and practice them, but yet it's a progression. So what that article that we just read emphasizes, and what teams such as yours and colleges and communities are now trying to work on, is that we're beyond the semantics of which word to use, whether it's grit or perseverance or soft skills or 21st century learning skills, but we're all sort of on board that now is the time to embed these competencies within our instruction and our daily living. So given that, we'd like to highlight the resources that we have and what's now available for you and for your team's use. Still at arizonatransition.org, you'll find your team folders under your cohort, and also 2 pages. The first is the sustainability page, where you could go right now and get the webinar PowerPoint that we are looking at today. This will include some of the newest research and resources on goal setting and self-regulation, both of which are our topics for today. Also are the supporting articles that we're highlighting today, the one you just had a chance to read through, and the one that we'll highlight in a moment from the American Psychological Association. Lastly, there's an action planning job aid under the sustainability page that you may and your team might like to use as you continue your action planning and the development of these competencies school-wide. On the resources page, we've updated some of the competencies with new videos supporting goal setting, self-regulation, and also some new measures. One of the biggest challenges really anyone doing this work is finding that there aren't a lot of good measures on goal setting, self-regulation, perseverance, self-efficacy. So we're in development of that. We've found some, we've shared them with you in the teacher guide, but now what we're doing is we're creating some and finding formats that will be easier to use, whether they be electronic, paper, pencil. We actually have Lake Havasu, who is rolling out the goal setting measure for all ninth graders. So that's for over 500 ninth graders in their school today. They administered it. So some good things being done there so that the content and the academic standards continue to be measured, but also these inter and intrapersonal competencies are now being measured school-wide so we can really target and support the students at whatever level they need. We continue to have the framework video and the multi-tiered instruction and intervention video on that resources page as well. So a fun thing that we just finished up was in a state. We took a survey of 500 students using one of our measures that's on that resource page about all the competencies and their perceptions, not teachers, not parents, but their perceptions of whether they excelled or needed support with all the competencies. And we wanted to share this analysis with you. So the 5 that came out as having the lowest means for all the students were self-regulation, conflict resolution, goal setting, initiative, and learning schema. And a secondary analysis was that we did a quick look at their GPAs, and isn't it interesting, just so you know, a quick look at this slide, is that all students said they still feel like they need support with goal setting, no matter what their GPA was. And almost all said that they need that with self-regulation, with the exception of students earning the highest GPAs. So we took that and we sort of ran with it and said, you know what? Since these are clearly 2 competencies, self-regulation and goal setting, that there's a substantial amount of research on, and also feedback from students, that we decided to target these 2 to look at how can we better or more improve goal setting and self-regulation for all students school-wide. So we began with self-regulation, and going forward, teams in the project are now being asked to really tailor how they work with students based off of components, not just instructional strategies, but more so components, making sure that these main ideas, if you will, of self-regulation are woven into their daily instruction, no matter what class the students are in. So whether it's PE, whether it's time with a guidance counselor, whether it's an English course for ninth graders, or maybe a job experience, these components are just woven into that setting. And we're getting a lot of good feedback from it. What we're highlighting, therefore, is 4 major components of self-regulation from the literature. The first 2, planning for and articulating what you want to accomplish as a student, and also immediately monitoring your progress regarding your goal. Those have been what we found are typically done in terms of self-regulation. So students typically plan for what they want to do, and typically students are taught to monitor how they're doing on their homework, how they're doing on their project, their assignment in biology class. But a hiccup, if you will, is the control piece. So we're having discussions as teams about having students take control for change by implementing specific strategies when things are not going as planned. So it's not just saying I'm not getting my homework done, or my project isn't making the progress that I need to, or my grades are not improving. It's saying, what am I going to do, therefore, to address that? And then lastly, reflecting on what worked and what didn't work and adjusting for that so you can do better next time. So the main difference here at this point is that rather than doing small worksheets about self-regulation, these components are making it much easier for folks to just sort of fold in to what they're already doing within their classrooms. And let me give you a better example about this, just to make it more real. So in terms of self-regulation, what we're now promoting, and we'd like you to do this as well as you work with your established teams, maybe your expanded teams, or maybe all-out new teams, is saying, okay, if we're going to work on self-regulation, planning, monitoring, controlling, and reflecting, we can really do this 2 ways. And I'll address the augmenting curriculum initially. Augmenting the curriculum means that, you know what, let's create a study time, let's monitor our study time, let's change it, modify it because it's not working, and then let's reflect on it. So right now my study time is to study in the car between the end of school and gymnastics class. I'm going to monitor how I'm doing on that. Monday I didn't get to it because my brother was screaming in the car. Tuesday my mom was talking on the phone. So you know what, now I need to modify my study plan, and I'm going to get up early, I'm going to do it at lunch. So you see the control piece there. And then lastly, reflecting on it. Now that's one way to approach teaching self-regulation in that way. A second way, and what we would say is even most effective, is embedding self-regulation right into the curriculum. So if you're in a science class, you would emphasize self-regulation in the main components of planning, monitoring, controlling, and self-regulation by saying, let's make a hypothesis statement. That's our plan. We're going to do the design. We're going to collect the data. We're going to look at that data. And then when we need to change it, we're going to change it. We're going to take some control and modify it. And we're going to draw the conclusions. So both are teaching, both means, whether it's embedding it into the curriculum or augmenting the curriculum, are means of pulling out and highlighting self-regulation. Planning, monitoring, taking control, changing what needs to be changed, and drawing conclusions. So it's being emphasized in 2 different ways, but neither one is being done separate from what students are learning. And that's really the power in what we've learning in all the research, is that the work around college and career competencies needs to be just included with students as many contexts as possible, right? So let's now take a look at a little example. This is Jim, And Jim says, you know, I got a new job at Jimmy John's, and he was so excited because the job pays more than his old McDonald's job, and he was saving up for a new phone. And, you know, he wants this new phone because he can take groupies instead of selfies, which is a real deal that I didn't know about, but Jim told me about this. So anyways, he is going to, every 2 weeks, put half of his paycheck into a box to save money. And also prom's coming up, so he needs to make sure he saves for that too. And 6 weeks later, the prom was great, but still not enough money for the phone. So he went into that shoebox and took out money for the prom. And now he says he knows why people use Spanx. So the whole idea around this is, does Jim really understand self-regulation? Does Jim plan? Did he have a plan to save his money? And most of us would argue, yeah, he had a plan. It was to use a shoebox. Now, does Jim monitor how he's doing on saving his money? Well, he monitored it, but only after 6 weeks. So this is an area that we could really work with Jim on. That is a part of self-regulation and being a success, post-school success, and really even in-school success is whatever you plan for, make sure you monitor your work right away. Don't wait too long to check on your hypothesis for your science experiment. Don't wait too long to see how your plan for studying is working. Monitor quickly, immediately, on how your progress is going based off of your goal and your plan. Third, control. How is Jim doing? Does he take charge and make a change to his saving strategy when he realized that he needs to save money for two purposes? Quite frankly, from my opinion, no. He doesn't really make a change. He waits too long, and he doesn't see that there's two purposes, and he needs to come up with a better plan. So it's at this point that when we talk to students about, after monitoring, adjust your plan based on what you see and take control. Don't wait for someone else to take control. You can have that ability to take control with or without support. And that control can come in a lot of different ways. It can come from peer support, adult support, enhancing your own capacity, environmental change, but it is necessary and a key component of self-regulation. The last one is reflection. Does Jim reflect on how he progressed? And I would give this a thumbs up, that Jim, yes, in this instant, he did reflect on it, but really without the monitoring and the controlling, his reflection will lead him to realize that he really did need a plan that included a quicker monitoring system and also a change in how he is saving for two different purposes. On our website, arizonatransition.org, this is an example of one of our new measures. So what we're proud of and we worked really hard on is that this measure for self-regulation, it's posted under the header self-regulation under the resources page as a PDF, and it's called Student Measure. And it targets the key components of self-regulation. So if you look at items 1 through 5 or 1 through 3, those things are about creating a plan. I plan out projects that I want to complete. If an important test is coming, I create a study plan. Before I do something fun, I consider all the things that I need to get done. Those are all about planning. And then later on in the measure, it's about monitoring. And then later on in the measure, it's about controlling. For example, item 17, I keep trying as many different possibilities as necessary to succeed. So this is a measure that's in the works. It is being piloted across the state, from Peoria to Lake Havasu to Colorado City, just from our last session for training. And what we'll do then is we are going to summarize the results on the self-regulation measure for the teams, and we're going to revise it even again so that we can make it shorter and possibly an online survey. If any of you have any suggestions for good measures on self-regulation or goal setting, please continue to share those with us, and we would really appreciate it. But what we're hearing across the country is that folks are, they're kind of like, yes, we agree. Inter and intrapersonal skills need to be developed, not just within an advisory class or one specific setting, but embedded within the curriculum. We're going to call it different things in different places, but we're lacking good measurement, good data on these competencies. So this is our, with the support of Arizona Department of Education, this is sort of, we're moving forward with this and getting good data around the components and the competencies. So here's the next components that we wanted to share for goal setting. So again, what we did was we said, in the past, our teams have done really good jobs at saying these are great strategies to learn from about goal setting. But we need to make sure that the components are shared with all teachers so that they can be easily, not just a worksheet, but the sort of the art of teaching, if you will, embedded within all classrooms, whether that be a special ed class, an art class, PE, math, English, typing. So here are the three that we were highlighting based off the best research in goal setting and attainment. And the first is that the goal setting process is student-centered. And what do we mean by that? Well, we mean that the students really care about that goal in an intrinsic way, not necessarily an extrinsic, I'm going to get an A in math because I want an A, but why is math important to me? What is the connection? The second one is about mastery of tasks rather than performance relative to others. So this is mastery goals versus performance goals. And I've got a couple things to share with you on that for the next slide. And the third one is about goal setting that uses interest and skill assessment data, including input from family members or others. So here are the three goals, the three components for goal setting that we'd like teachers to start really using their art of teaching to either augment or embed within their curriculum. To talk a little bit more about mastery goal and performance goals, we thought we'd give you a little example. So if we were to say, is number 1 or number 2 a mastery goal? Number 1 says, I will get a better grade than Isabel on the science test. And number 2 is, I want to get better at algebra, so I spend time each night this week working on practice problems. And if you're thinking right now that number 2 is the mastery goal, you're dead on. Mastery goals are really about being intrinsically motivated to learn material. It's sort of the idea of the love of the game versus the trophy, getting the trophy. Mastery goals help have that competence. That competence develops over time and through practice and effort, not that you're just born smart. And so there's another difference there. So if you were making your T-chart of mastery versus performance goals, you would want students to really learn that there's a love of learning versus just sort of that external reinforcement. There is the belief that competence develops over time versus that idea that competence is sort of just a stable trait that you're born with it. Another difference would be this idea that learning strategies help you better understand and promote your comprehension, whereas performance goals are more focused on memorization. Another difference is that with mastery goals, students are trying to seek feedback that helps them improve, but with performance goals, students are often looking for feedback that flatters them. And another one is where mastery goals are having students seeing failure as just an opportunity to work harder on something. But with performance goals, it's really them seeing, oh, you know what, I failed at this once, and I'm probably going to fail at it again. Lastly, and one that really resonates with me, is that as I've worked with students, those who have this mastery goal orientation really see a teacher as a resource. And those that have this performance goal orientation see the teacher as someone who judges, who is the rewarder or the punisher. So why is this important? Why did we choose this as one of our main components? We chose this mastery goal over orientation because so much of the literature associates mastery goals with higher levels of academic self-efficacy. Students who have this orientation towards mastery goals versus a letter grade or I'm going to be better than so-and-so have this belief that learning develops over time, and that failure is just another opportunity to learn. And for those of you who are thinking growth mindset, you're right on. This is very much aligned with growth mindset. We have a small picture here in the bottom of a woman from California, and we've used her videos before, but in this video, what's really interesting about her is that what she does is that she no longer puts the grade at the top of the test when she returns it. And that's not to say she doesn't grade the test. She does grade it. But what she did was she now highlights. All of her grading is done through a highlight. And so she'll say that our focus is not on the grades. Our focus is on learning. And that you're going to get your test back from Friday. She passes out their tests. And when they see their tests, there's no big letter at the top or percentage at the top, and there's just highlighted marks. And then she goes over with it and she says, you know, when can you retake this test? And they'll say to her, we can retake it next week. She says, how do you find out your actual letter grade? And they say, we go to Power School. And then she gets into this main idea that your grade isn't nearly as important as how much math you learn in this class. Your grade isn't nearly as important as how much math you learn in this class. And her experience is kind of this idea of shifting from a notion where you look at your grade and you decide if you're good at math or not, and you never look at it again. And she wants kids to keep looking at their paper and seeing how they can use their work to inform their future work and learning. And it's just a really powerful video about this orientation of mastery goals. So share that with others as you get them thinking about this component of goal setting. So let's kind of do the same case study example with Jill. So here's Jill's little scenario. Jill says, my goal is to make the cheerleading squad this year at school. I need an after-school activity to put on my college application. And Mary is trying out this year too. You know Mary, she has so many friends, and she said hi to me the other day when I was messing with my new phone. So the goal setting checklist, which, as you remember, is about these components: student-centered, mastery versus performance, and uses interest and skill assessment data. So does Jill have a strong understanding of those main components around goal setting? Is cheerleading something Jill cares about? So it's going to involve a conversation. When we've done this in large groups before, you know, there's no right or wrong answer. Oftentimes the conversation goes to, you know, she cares, what she cares about for sure is this girl that she's impressed with. But we don't really know how much she cares about cheerleading. We do know that she cares about something on her college applications, but we're not sure if cheerleading is really the intrinsic motivator that she's connected to. Is she motivated by progress over time? Or is this sort of like a one-shot, just, like the final cheerleading, did she make it or not? So for that one, we don't have much information on. So we would have this conversation with Jill about how goal setting is really about, practicing, assessing, practicing, assessing, practicing, assessing. And what we know from research and all of our experiences is that students who have this motivated progress over time orientation are much better at adjusting to and overcoming the obstacles that they will undoubtedly face in life, whether they be in school or out of school. So just, know, Jill, it's not always going to work out. And you're just going to have to orientate yourself to progress over time and not necessarily just a one-time do or die shot. The next question that we would ask Jill is her goal based on her current cheerleading skills? And from the scenario, we can say no. We're just not sure. We don't even know if she knows how she is at cheerleading, nor do we know if she got input from anyone who also knows about cheerleading. So probably the thing I would star on my paper right now would be this notion that there are components of self-regulation, goal setting, and of all the other competencies on our college and career competency wheel. And the idea isn't to give the one worksheet, but to try to infuse these components within students thinking about any of their work, whether that be employment, rec, leisure, or the actual academic standards they're doing in school. And here is our goal setting measure. So again, if you were interested in giving this goal setting measure at your school, please feel free to email myself or Michelle Lowenstein or Madeline Weta, and we can support you with this. But there's a measure that has been developed and is ready to pilot that really targets those main components of goal setting. The last couple resources that we wanted to share, this one revolves around data as well. And we've developed this tracking log that teams are now using that has 5 columns. And the first column is about what group of students you're talking about and thinking about. The second column is the target competencies, so maybe that's self-regulation. The third column is about your observational notes around self-regulation. I did a lesson and we highlighted the main parts of self-regulation, the main components, and students are really struggling with the taking control component. We have pre-post data, what that assessment data tells us, or even homework project information that we can put in this last column here. So it's sort of this idea as teams of teachers, interdisciplinary teams of teachers and educators and principals start working on these competencies. How can we keep an assessment, sort of the database decision-making loop around these competencies in front of us for discussion about what we need to emphasize and revisit as students progress and become more comfortable with the components of each of the competencies. Because bottom line is, we know that competencies can be taught. We have all this literature on it, and that they must be systematically infused into instruction to have an impact. The separate class, the separate booklet, the one-time worksheet isn't what makes it generalizable and really gets that deeper learning for our teens. As we get to the discussion part of today, we wanted to also offer this action planning job aid. So for some of the teams who are continuing to do action planning around the competencies and have found that the action plans could use some improvement, we have created this template, and there's some elements here, 1 through 5 at the top: administrator support, teacher prep, instruction, assessment, and lessons learned. So if you have your group of 5 current team members or new team members or just yourself, how do you continue to lay the groundwork for the development of competencies in especially inter and intrapersonal domains? What kind of presentation would you give for that administrative support? How would you present your plan? Would you get feedback on that plan? And how could you execute with administrator support? The reality is that many of our district initiatives are predetermined before school even starts. So if this is an area, an element that you need to target, these might be some sort of helpful guide, sort of a road map, if you will, to get administrative support. If you feel like you're there because you're a veteran team and yet you need to revisit teacher preparation, maybe you start with a small group of teachers who are new, teachers who are now seeing some need. And you would determine those teachers and take a stab at introducing them to maybe mastery versus performance orientation for goal setting, or to this notion of the cycle of self-regulation and really targeting the control piece for students and taking control by having there be enhanced capacity within themselves, changing their environment, or reaching out to someone else. And down the road, and then to the instruction, what would that lesson plan look like? How would teaching a persuasive essay include goal setting? How is it becoming meaningful, student-centered? How does that persuasive essay be based on progress? How is that persuasive essay going to have feedback from others or input from others? And then there's the assessment, which can include pre-post data or just observational data, and your lessons learned as a team about this work. The year 3 outcomes are simply, it's not simple, but simply to continue your efforts around college and career competencies school-wide, to keep charging forward in the hopes that when teams do this work, there is improved academic achievement, improved graduation rates, decrease in dropout rates, and improved post-school outcome data. Arizona by far is a leader in this field. Other national initiatives who we strongly support are doing similar work, and they're just sort of starting now with rolling out the idea of the competencies and getting those discussed in school. Your teams are aware of the competencies, you're aware of the charge and really the need to embed it within the instruction to see this type of success: academic achievement, graduation rate, dropout, and post-school outcome data improved. This is that APA article that's available through the email that Madeline sent to you, also on the sustainability page. But someone says, really? You really think we should do this? Here's the article to share, hands down. Sue Wolf was one of our guest speakers at our session 4 that we just recently had in Phoenix. And she provided this at her table, and it's a very short article, very recent, September 2015. And if you glance at this article, it's the top 20 teaching and learning principles that science and research is saying that all pre-K through 12 teachers and educators should be aware of. And I'll tell you what, it just rings college and career competencies. The first one is about growth mindset. It's about this belief and their perceptions in themselves, self-efficacy, and that they have the ability to learn and do. It's not just a fixed thing. I'm not just dumb or smart or good in math or not good at math. But this is something that you can mold as an educator within your instruction. Learning schema is the second one that's highlighted. having students orientate what they're learning about their past experiences, and have them sort of adjust that file folder in their brain and integrate it into a new mind map. If you look down to number 4, learning is based on context. So generalizing learning to new contexts is not spontaneous, but needs to be facilitated. Okay, you know, like, what more do we need to put up on our walls or next on the Post-it note next to our desk that say, this isn't just for one teacher to do. This is something for all of us to work on. Number 7, self-regulation assists in learning, and these skills can be taught. You don't just know to plan. You don't just know to monitor. You don't just know that you need to take control or reflect. These are components that students need practice and need to be taught. And what's tricky is that it's sometimes hard for us as well. But I think, you know, we model, we discuss, we do think alouds, and we embed and we augment our curriculum. So when we take sort of that holistic approach, whatever we feel comfortable with, then we'll make some real headway in this. The last one I'd like to target here is numbers 9 and number 10. And 9 really talks about that student-centered goal, that they are intrinsically motivated. What is their connection to that learning? And number 10 is this idea of mastery goals versus performance goals. And when they do that, when they hit challenges, they will keep going because they know learning is a process. It's not, I got to see, I'm good at this part of math or I'm not good at it. But learning math is much more important than what your grade is in one particular instance. So those are kind of the nuts and bolts of our webinar together, of what we're emphasizing in the project this year and what we hope sort of remotivates you, reconnects you to the work of developing college and career competencies for the teens of Arizona. Feel free to share that competency wheel with parents. Feel free to share it with employers. Feel free to talk with them about, you know, what do they see as the need for students and what components can they integrate within their settings as we contextualize and make for deeper learning for teens. We'd love this time now to be about us just discussing what your team has been doing. So please take this time to chat in the box about any of these three bullet points. What has your team been doing? What do you hope they accomplish this year? What are your fears, barriers, or needs? And if you want to do some of this privately, please feel free to just email or call us, but I think the group as a whole would really benefit from just a couple of your thoughts in the chat box. We would appreciate that. So as you're chatting, save the date for our next webinar, and any of the glitches that we've had this time, we'll have them worked out. But big thanks to Madeline and Michelle for walking us through sort of those technical issues. And know that we really do give you the high five, Internet, for joining us today and for the work you're doing. Madeline, do you have any comments about turning on mics or just using the chat box now?
My inclination is, of course, let's do what's working for now, which seems to be the chat box. I have everybody muted except for us, so I'm comfortable with that at this time, though I am getting feedback on myself from my own web browser, which is why I'm talking so strangely. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Wow, okay. Nita, thank you for that. Robbie and I from Tempe High, we're very excited as our entire school has gotten on board. This work takes time, and that buy-in is critical. Metacognition and mastery versus performance. Super. Let us know if we can support you with any of those, Nita, and we will work on them. I will tell you that in terms of metacognition, I'm trying to think of how to describe this. We were finding that overall, nationally, many schools are really working hard on some of the competencies within the cognitive domain, including metacognition, learning schema, creativity, critical thinking, organization, problem solving. So we have not spent as much time within that cognitive domain as we have within intrapersonal and interpersonal. However, that's not to say it's not important to do. So as you go forward with this, let us know how we can support you with it, and especially with the mastery performance. Great. And the tips on soft skills and grit, etc. Thanks. Anybody else? Too bad we didn't have any Barry Manilow music to play, Madeline.
It's a huge shame. I really miss the Kiss as well. I might have a CD stashed here somewhere.
Well, we will be here, and Madeline will be sending out a link for a quick feedback or survey regarding the webinar, in the hopes that we can improve it for next time. So she'll send that out later for us with Michelle's support. Oh, Michelle, thank you very much for sending that link. Great. Yes, Winslow High School. Hi. Naviance is a really great program. I think there's a cost to that as well, but it does really help with transition and informal assessments around many of the competencies. So Trista, our charge to you and your team from Winslow would be that not only do they use that Naviance program and the information gained from it to put it into transition plans, but also to drive instruction within all classes, making sure that goes from, from students working through the program to actually how teachers can use it to change their instruction and embed what they need within their lessons. Okay, Dawn's given us some information. Right. So Dawn, perfect example, and we've experienced this sort of progressive elaboration in our own work as we have rolled this out to teams. So we know what you're saying, that sometimes we take on too much and we really have to take a few steps back. So we are now asking teams to do a pilot tier 1 as a part of their work breakdown structure. So what that looks like is we say to teams, pick a time frame, maybe between now and the next time we meet. Target at least 1 or 2 teachers who work with a representative group of youth. So not just a special education teacher or a guidance counselor, but like a person who would have a nice mix of students who would be considered receiving special services, at risk of dropout, maybe advanced placement, and work on a lesson plan, learning objectives and a lesson plan that would embed goal setting or self-regulation components within your instruction between now and, maybe it's for a unit or a week, and then get assessment data for those students, and pre-post data or observational data on what it looked like for goal setting for students before and after the instruction, and then reflect on that with those targeted teachers. And it's a nice way to sort of roll it out in a smaller way and then build on those experiences and adjust as needed. Okay, it's 3 o'clock, so we'll stay on or call us if you'd like, but we don't want to keep you longer than necessary. So we just want to thank you for your continued efforts, and we hope to see you back for our next webinar, which is January 20th, 2016. We wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your continued work.